This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 253 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's episode is titled Walking the World. I'm not about to take off on a, multi-year trek around the world, but I guess this episode is my ode to walking as a way of seeing the world. It's one of the best ways to really get to know a place. One of my regrets about where I live right now is, well, there's some good parts. I can walk out from my front door through lots of parks and bushland and it's beautiful. So I can go for a walk in lots of directions and it's wonderful. I've been able to walk my son to school. Now he's at the age where he rides himself to school without me, but for many years I walked him to school and back. But other than that, it's not, where I live is not really a walkable suburb for life reasons. The nearest shops are really too far to walk there and back to, especially if you're carrying any, substantial amount of shopping. There's no coffee shop in easy walking distance and that kind of thing. So I wish if I could have the best of all worlds, I would live somewhere where everything was a walkable distance and I could use my car even less. When I do get to travel, I love a good walk. I've done a few shortish walking trips. I'm really keen to do some more. Quite a few years back now, I did a walking trip in Cornwall in England, which was just divine, with a Slovak friend of mine. And so scenic. I loved it. And other than that, really, I've just done sort of short day walks or, day-long walks in various spots. By now, actually, I really should have done a long planned walk on the Cape to Cape track here in southwest Western Australia. But my walking buddy lives in Sydney and either she keeps getting locked out or I keep getting locked in. So we have tried and failed several times. I think it's about 18 months since we decided to do this walk. We're still waiting. Maybe next year we will be able to hit the Cape to Cape. I'm looking forward to doing it at some stage. It can be like about a week-long walk, which I cannot wait. And when I do get to that, I promise there'll be a wonderful podcast episode about it, or more than one. But in the meantime, I have been chatting with lots of other people who like walking as well. And the first walking fans I'm chatting with today are Kath and Howie of the Museum of Us. I actually used to teach English with Kath some years back, and we've kept in touch, and I was pretty envious when she and Howie walked the Camino, and we chat in this about how that came about and why. Now, you also may hear a friendly dog trying to get in on the podcast action. I could barely hear this dog as we recorded, but I can hear the odd bark in this episode, but I'm actually surprised. I think this is the very first dog on the Thoughtful Travel Podcast, and I guess that the dog was pretty excited because we're talking about walking and, every dog loves to go for a walk. So here's Kath and Howie talking about the Camino.
We walked the Camino Frances. Mm-hmm. We started just over the border in France at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is where a lot of so the Camino has a lot of paths. The Camino means walk and it means path. They converge at Santiago de Compostela. So when you say Camino, it just means that you're walking a pilgrimage that can come from many places, traditionally from your home.
If you don't have oceans in the way.
Yeah, that's right. So that didn't really work for us. But Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port is a town where a lot of the European Caminos converge before they cross the Pyrenees and go into Spain. For us, I think it was like the romantic idea of walking across Spain from border to ocean was quite strong with us. And there's also like all sorts of historical paths, I guess, through there as well. So we started there. We walked in all for 42 days.
Yes.
That's some rest days in there, and we walked to the ocean. So we went to Santiago and then a little bit beyond.
Kept going. Mm-hmm.
We actually stopped a day before we thought we were going to, because we saw the ocean. And as soon as we saw it, we kind of looked at each other and went, "Oh, we're done."
That's it. Yeah, that's the finishing point. Yeah.
We felt finished there.
Yeah.
There's a spot a few days before Santiago where a lot of people will carry a stone or a little rock the whole way on their journey and get to this place.
Oh, Cristofero.
That's it.
Yeah.
And by leaving the stone there, and there's this huge mound of stones, like a zillion stones there now, but by leaving your stone there, you're leaving...
it represents your burden.
Yes.
Right.
That
you have carried all this way, and now you are giving up that
leave it
burden.
there and you carry on.
You leave something that you want to let go of. A lot of people, I think, carry stone. Like a lot of people carry grief.
Mm-hmm.
When people walk the Camino for a lot of reasons, but grief is a very common reason that people, or a common burden that people carry. So for a lot of people, they will leave. There's a lot of in memoriam stuff around this Cristofero as well. So a lot of people have written on their stones or leave pictures of loved ones, that kind of thing.
But we got there and decided that we wanted to carry on.
Yeah.
You didn't have any...
We didn't want to leave our burden.
Yeah.
Can you translate for that for the podcast?
But I don't think it was about burdens though. So like for us, I think there is something in it as well because we're not religious.
Sure.
And we weren't walking the pilgrimage as Catholics.
Yeah.
So to leave something below a cross felt inauthentic to us.
But we also, as we got there, we decided, no, our thing is to walk to the coast.
Yeah.
With the coast being so important in both of our lives so far.
Yeah.
It just sort of fit as well. So the main Camino sort of ends in Santiago, but there's another little extra bit, 4 days more walking, you get to the coast.
Right. Yeah.
So we knew we wanted to go the whole way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would feel the same as someone who's grown up on the coast. The coast is...
Yep.
That's... Yeah, exactly. That's a natural ending. Kath and Howie haven't been lifelong walkers or hikers, so I asked them to explain how all of this long-distance walking had got started.
We both acquired knee injuries around the same time and both went off to physios, and the general consensus was the best rehab was to walk. So we started walking. The walking got further and we started hiking, started getting some of the gear, good shoes, etc. And then Kath came home from a work do one night and rather drunkenly said, "I've heard about this walk." Oh yeah, okay. It's in Spain. I'm like, oh, yes, okay. It's 800 odd kilometres. Okay. So off we went.
There is,
any chance for travel, I'm like,
yeah. As soon as you heard Spain, you're like, okay, that's great. I don't care. 800? Oh, doesn't matter.
Bend his rubbery arm. I think, that was, I don't know that I would have ever, I guess I wouldn't have considered it had I not heard it from that particular group of women.
Right.
I think that was the thing, was that, this is a group of women who are, some of whom are older than me, and I really, like and respect them, and the feeling that if they thought they could do it, I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious. Can I go back to the knees? Did it really help your knees?
Yes.
It continues to help my knees.
Interesting.
Yeah. The idea is to strengthen the muscle around the joint.
Yeah.
So actually, Kath doesn't have an ACL in her knee.
I left that in Japan.
On a ski field.
Ouch. Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
And mine was just an old surfing injury that I made worse jumping off a small fence.
Right. And so, the strengthening power of walking has helped.
Yeah. I mean, it does mean that we have to think about how much we carry, and I walk poles and...
Mm-hmm. We both walk.
And have to keep fit.
Yes.
Because that's the only way. That's the only way I can manage my knees, to keep it moving and to keep it strong. I'm not going surgical.
But it's led to this whole other world.
I was going to say, brilliant.
The Caminos, the Bibbulmun track,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
I would also say that prior to going on the Camino, we decided we had to then get fit,
Yes.
get our walking fitness up.
Yeah.
And to do that, we walked around Perth. Now, Howie, I think at that point in our lives it was quite sick of Perth. Like I think
I understand.
even almost like desperate to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
But started doing these, he is to some extent, but we started doing these walks and walking along the coast and walking the river. We walked most of the Swan River eventually.
Wow.
And I think for both of us, it was like, well, we newly fell in love with Perth in a different way.
Yeah, there's a whole other place.
Yeah.
Since the Camino a few years back, Kath and Howie have done a lot of walking. They were about to head to Europe when the pandemic hit last year and had to change their plans quite dramatically, but ended up doing some really epic Western Australian walking instead. You can see a lot more about it on their YouTube videos at the Museum of Us, which I'll put a proper link to in the show notes. Well worth a watch. Really, they produce some fabulous videos. Now, my next walking guest is Justin Watson. And actually, probably he should be called a climbing guest because there wasn't much flat about his walk in Bhutan. Justin and I actually talked about his Bhutan trip for this recording quite some time back, but it's been waiting for the right episode because it's such a great story. So let's have a listen.
There's one site that I believe everyone probably goes to Bhutan to see, which is the Tiger's Nest Monastery. So that'll be, if you Google Bhutan, that's probably the pitch that comes up all the time. And they tend to, so all these tours, even though they're individual and you can arrange and do things differently on different days, they tend to try and leave the Tiger's Nest Monastery for the last day, or just because of two things. It's so beautiful and so amazing, you don't want to do that first. And secondly, all the other climbing up hills acclimatises you for this climb up an even bigger hill.
Right.
And it was, I do a lot of hiking up hills, but this was, I don't know, it was next level. It was, the first part of the climb was about 2 hours straight up the side of the hill. I was struggling, Noel being older in age and a hell of a lot fitter, had trudged off the hill with some other person travelling who had hurt their own guide, and so he was chatting away and they power walked up the side of the hill, and I was absolutely struggling, but my guide Tenzin was with me the whole way, and he says, "Oh, Justin, we can take a shortcut." I said, "Oh, really? You're kidding me, there's a shortcut?" And he says, "Yes." And I've gone, okay, so we leave the path, which is up the side of the hill, to just walk straight up the side of the hill, which was harder.
Oh, okay, so shortcut, maybe shorter distance, but wow.
And I said to him, Tenzin, that's harder. And he says, it's a Bhutanese shortcut. Like,
oh, he got you there.
Can we just go the normal way? And the Bhutanese would all hike up this in their formal attire as well. So,
oh gosh,
and their formal attire is like a woolen, kind of like it's a big jacket, but even the men, it goes down to sort of around the knees, and it's kind of
not really good hiking.
No, and then they're allowed to wear the hiking, like walking shoes, rather than business shoes, but so they're hiking up. They're used to hiking up and everyone else has got their latest fashion wear from their favourite outdoor store to climb up this hill. And so the first part of the hike's about 2 hours, and you get to a tea house and you sit down. And this is amazing, and you can see it across. It's literally across kind of a valley, and you're like, it's such a stunning view of the monastery. And then you go, don't worry, it's not that much more uphill. And I've gone, okay. He said, do you think you can make it? I'm like, yeah, I can make it. And then he said, there's 900 steps or 1,000 steps. And I've gone, oh.
That's a lot.
They weren't as bad, but it kind of goes down past a lovely waterfall and then back up into the temple.
Oh, gosh.
Now, it was absolutely worth it, but I tell you what, I had not prepared well enough for that walk. And I have since it's probably given me a new lease on life, and I've since ensured I'm fit enough to climb hills when I'm travelling. So you think you can do and what you can actually do are sometimes two different things. But
yeah. Wow.
It's a fascinating country, but I think people get the wrong idea about it with regards to the fee and how you got to pay and you got to go on a tour. But it's really not like that. It's you get a guide and they're very happy to talk to you about all sorts of things, anything you want. We talked about politics. He didn't hold back on anything. He would talk to me about things. So
what's the reasoning behind them only offering, like, tourists can only come in that way? So it's like quite different to the North Korean thing, obviously.
Yeah. So the main reason they do that is because they want to keep it as pristine as possible. So they don't. They want to keep the experience as authentic and Bhutanese as they possibly can. Now, there may be a risk to that because Indians, in order for Bhutanese to go to India visa-free, Indians are now allowed to go to Bhutan visa-free. But I think in the like the burgeoning Indian middle class that are flying all over the world are probably looking for the same sort of places. Others are like, they're dreaming of going to Paris or, Rome.
Not necessarily Bhutan,
Not necessarily Bhutan because it's on their doorstep, whereas there were quite a few there at the Tiger's Nest, but otherwise you didn't see many tourists at all. And I was travelling, I think it was a week before peak season started.
Oh, okay.
And I deliberately picked that week because basically the weather was going to be good and it was cheaper fees.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But it was really not. I guess people get this feeling that it's a bit insidious or there's something cool, but they're completely open and they'll talk to you about anything you want. And people are very reserved. Like the towns have got like little shops and that, and some of them sell things like touristy souvenirs, but they're very, I won't say shy people, but like. I walked into a shop and was looking at some fridge magnets and they just kind of say hello and that was it. They didn't try and force me to buy anything. They didn't. And when I left, they said, have a nice day. And,
Sounds lovely.
And it's a place I would love to go back to and see more of it.
I'm still giggling, to be honest, about the Bhutanese shortcut. It seems like the kind of shortcut I do not want to take. I would love to get to Bhutan. I have been thinking about it a lot lately. I've got a student in the postgrad course I'm teaching this semester who's from Bhutan, and he is quite quiet, but I'm hoping to get more and more info from him and learn more about Bhutanese culture. And one day, travel there. So my final guest today is Sydney-based writer Tara Wells. She has had a book recently published, the Bondi to Manly Walk Guidebook, and it's gorgeous. So Sydney, of course, is just such a dramatically scenic city, and this walk or this walking route takes in like many of its, most gorgeous parts all along the coast. And I have seen bits of it and I would love to get to more of it, and especially now with this book. It gives me some extra ideas, lots of snippets of history and culture and other parts. It's not just a walk here, do this. Now, obviously, all of this makes Tara an experienced walker, and we chatted about how to make walking while travelling an even better experience.
Tied in with disconnecting is also if you enjoy walking or hiking. I don't necessarily just mean through the bush. I also mean when you walk through cities, which is my favourite way to discover a new city, is through walking. I urge you, please don't listen to music or podcasts while you do it. That multitasking, I mean, I love music and I love podcasts, but again, you're removing yourself ever so slightly from where you are. If you're in the city, listen to the sounds of the city, notice the people walking past, tune into the language, whether you can understand what they're saying or not, because you can understand quite a lot through
without knowing the words.
And
exactly.
tone, that's right.
Yeah.
And in the bush, even if you think there's no noise, there's so much noise in the bush. So there's birds, and in forests, there's bird life and just the sound of wind through trees, things that you would miss if you've got literally a soundtrack playing that's not where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we need that to really feel restored.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's so true. And I am guilty of all of these things that you have said. Sometimes. Not always guilty of them, but by the nature of the work I do, then it's very hard sometimes to avoid it. But you're right. So this is a very good reminder.
It's a challenge because,
yeah.
Amanda, you still need to have a social media presence. So how do you do it without that taking over your travel experience?
Yeah.
That is quite personal to you. I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
No,
we all struggle.
We all do. But I think the less is more kind of approach is exactly how we need to think about it. So, yeah, that's cool.
I've just written a guidebook on a bushwalk, on a hike that's semi-urban. It's through cityscape. It's through over cliffs. It's in pristine tree area. And it's by the coast. So, of course, I'm going to say bushwalking, hiking, tramping, being in nature, swimming in the salty ocean. This is all regenerative. But here's the quirk that I think you can take on. Sometimes walking through the bush, it's never going to be bad. It's always going to be good. The Japanese call it forest bathing. It will go towards restoring your soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The next challenge is, why don't you try stopping? Why don't you just try sitting on a rock at, maybe it's very, very scenic, maybe it's a closed-in space where you can't see far with not much view. And I challenge you to get through those first 5 minutes of like, well, there's nothing here. I'm ready to keep walking. And that's when you start to notice, there's a bunch of ants attacking a caterpillar that I never noticed before. Or, wow, I've just seen a bird swoop down and it got the lizard. Yeah, it got the lizard or the little worm. And sometimes in the sitting and pausing is when you notice rather than in the walking through the space. And I really don't think we do much stopping. So stopping, literally stopping in your tracks, will go a long way to feeding your soul.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's where you come away from a day feeling really refreshed and restored, isn't it? So, yeah. Now, I can't heartily endorse not listening to podcasts while you're walking, because obviously I know that lots of you listen to my podcast while you're walking. So please continue to do that. But otherwise, I find Tara's advice absolutely spot on. So that's it for episode 253 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. As promised, a few important links. So if you're curious to see what Kath and Howie, well, first of all, what Kath and Howie look like and all the exciting stuff they've been up to, they have a fabulous series of videos from their walk on the Bibbulmun track here in Western Australia, which are just fabulous, and some other videos as well. And you can find them on YouTube at The Museum of Us. You can go to youtube.com/The Museum of Us. After Kath and Howie, I chatted with Justin Watson, who you'll find very familiar if you listen to my book club episodes, because he's my fabulous book club co-host. He also has a blog at Justin's World, which is at justins.world. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Tara Wells. She has her own website at tarawellsauthor.com. And her book, The Bondi to Manly Walk Guidebook, is out now, and I'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well. Don't forget to come and join a group of your choice. On Facebook, we are Thoughtful Travellers, and if you just go to Facebook and search for Thoughtful Travellers, you'll find us. And on LinkedIn, we're also Thoughtful Travellers. Easiest way to find us there is notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. And all of this info and more will be in the show notes. And for this episode, you can find those at notaballerina.com/253. So happy walking. And as always, thanks so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.